In the headlines, the North Korean leader's trip to Russia. Kim Jong-un is planning his first trip abroad in May to attend Russia's celebrations marking the 70th anniversary of victory over Nazi Germany. Gunmen storm a luxury hotel in Tripoli. The Islamic State's Libya branch claims responsibility for the shootings that have left at least 10 people dead. Apple surprise earnings. The company did even better than what investors are expecting from them, selling 74.5 million iPhones in the holiday quarter. These stories and more on Early Edition at 6. It's 6 p.m. on a Wednesday here in Korea. Hello and welcome to our newscast live from Seoul. I'm Lee Ji-yoon.
And I'm Daniel Che. Good to have you with us.
It looks like North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will be going to Russia after all.
That's right. Citing the Kremlin, Seoul-based Yonhap News reported this morning that Kim is among the 20 heads of state that have confirmed their plans to attend Russia's celebrations, marking the 70th anniversary of their victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. Unfortunately, the report did add that the Kremlin has not yet finalized its guest list.
Yes, if the North Korean leader visits Russia, it will be his first trip abroad since coming into power in 2011. Russia also invited President Park Geunhye to this event, but she has yet to confirm her attendance.
Hopefully they will be able to meet and there will be no last-minute changes in that crucial invitation-only list. Yeah. Well, moving to other stories, top nuclear envoys from the United States and Japan expressed their support for South Korea's efforts to improve inter-Korean relations.
Yes, following a trilateral meeting in Tokyo on Wednesday, South Korea's chief nuclear envoy Hwang Jung-guk said they agreed on the need for a strong signal from the North about its sincerity toward denuclearization in order to resume the stalled six-party nuclear talks.
The multilateral dialogue involving the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia, has been stalled since late 2008, addressing concerns that Washington's tough stance on the North may hamper Seoul's efforts to improve ties with Pyongyang. Hwang said the U.S. supports South Korea's efforts for inter-Korean dialogue.
Meanwhile, inter-Korean trade hit a new high after the Kaesong industrial complex restarted more than a year ago. But that doesn't mean its future is secure, as several factors remain that could hinder growth. Our Song Ji-sun has this report.
Could this be a bright sign for the two Koreas' future relations? The Korea International Trade Association said on Wednesday inter-Korean trade volume topped $2.3 billion in 2014, more than double the figure from the year before. The cumulative trade volume over the past 26 years is $22 billion. Inter-Korean trade dropped to an 8-year low in 2013, the year Pyongyang shut down the jointly run Kaesong industrial complex, citing heightened tensions on the peninsula. It resumed operations there 5 months later. The products from the complex account for almost all inter-Korean trade. The recent jump in trade volume could get an extra boost from a recently concluded free trade pact between Seoul and Beijing, as the two sides agreed to acknowledge Kaesong products as being South Korean in origin. Manufacturers who invest in the Kaesong complex will gain a competitive edge, as their labor costs will be lower than those in China. But obstacles to the stable growth of inter-Korean trade remain, with bilateral tensions a major concern. North Korea added a new clause in September last year that allows it to detain South Korean businessmen if they do not comply with a contract or fail to make agreed payments. Pyongyang held South Korean businessmen when it shut down the complex in April 2013, saying they had outstanding bills. Another challenge will be expanding the capacity of the factories within the complex. Seoul banned facilities investment in the joint complex after the sinking of Cheonan warship in 2010. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert expressed his support for Seoul in its bitter diplomatic row with Tokyo over Japan's wartime aggression. And our Hwang Sang-hee tells us more about what he had to say about Japan's wartime sexual slavery.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's seemingly unapologetic attitude about Japan's wartime atrocities is drawing concerns from the United States. In an interview on Tuesday, U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert recognized the gravity of the so-called comfort women issue.
The President of the United States, when he was here in April, called the treatment shocking. So we know that it's tough and a very emotional issue.
The unresolved matter of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women has been the biggest thorn in Seoul and Tokyo's bilateral ties. Abe stirred things up this week by hinting that his so-called Abe statement may drop words of apology used in statements by his predecessors. He is set to unveil it this summer to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Lippert expressed U.S. support for the existing Kono and Murayama statements and addressed President Park Geunhye's recent efforts to mend ties.
We found that President Park's recent proposal of a trilateral foreign minister meeting as a constructive step that could possibly lead to a trilateral summit.
The ambassador welcomed Seoul's efforts to improve relations with Pyongyang, saying the U.S. has no concerns with the speed or scope of the inter-Korean dialogue proposed by President Park. And when will Washington be ready to engage with the communist state? That, he said, is when the North is willing to take steps for a complete, irreversible, verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Over in Tripoli, gunmen attacked a hotel frequented by foreign diplomats and dignitaries in the Libyan capital, killing at least 10 people there. The Islamic State's Libya branch has claimed responsibility for this attack. Our Kim Jong-un has the latest.
A pair of gunmen stormed a luxury hotel in Tripoli Tuesday local time, killing at least 10 people, including 5 foreigners, before blowing themselves up. The attack began with a car bombing at the 5-star Corinthia Hotel, which is popular among government officials and visiting delegations. Security personnel evacuated guests, including the country's prime minister. The deaths of a French and an American national have been confirmed by their governments. The AFP said earlier that a Korean was among the dead. However, Seoul's foreign ministry said that no Korean casualties have been reported so far, citing Libyan officials, adding that it will report any new developments. A group calling itself Islamic State in Tripoli province said in a Twitter message it is responsible for the attack, saying it was revenge for an al-Qaeda terrorist suspect who died in the U.S. earlier this month. The Libyan prime minister condemned the attack and vowed that those responsible would be brought to justice. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The Islamic State has given Japan 24 hours to save Kenji Goto, its second Japanese hostage. In a new video, the group threatens to kill Goto and a Jordanian pilot within 24 hours unless a convicted female suicide bomber detained in Jordan is released. The Japanese government says it's doing all it can to bring its citizen home. Our Kim Young-gil has this story.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Wednesday called a new video featuring the Japanese hostage Kenji Goto despicable and vowed to secure his release.
It's a despicable act. I feel strong anger. I have put out an order that we work together as one on securing the release of Kenji Goto as soon as possible.
The 2-minute video, which was posted on YouTube on Tuesday, demands the release of Sajida al-Rishawi, an Iraqi woman sentenced to death in Jordan for her involvement in a 2005 hotel terror attack. The video's narrator says any more delays by the Jordanian government to release the Iraqi suicide bomber will mean they'll be responsible for the death of their pilot. The Jordanian pilot was captured after his jet crashed in Syria last December during a bombing mission against the militants. The Japanese government has been asking for the Jordanian government's support for Goto's release. Goto's mother made an emotional appeal to Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Wednesday to save the life of her son.
Dear Mr. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, please save the life of Genji. I call on you to work with all your strength in negotiations with the Jordanian government until the very end.
In a previous video uploaded on Saturday, a voice purported to be Goto's announced that Islamic State militants had executed fellow Japanese hostage Haruna Yukawa, who was seized in August. Goto is a freelance journalist who was taken hostage in Syria in October while trying to rescue Yukawa. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
And this just coming in, the Islamic State, which threatened to kill their second Japanese hostage, Mr. Kenji Goto, a journalist, they seem to have released him recently. Japanese reports are saying that there's a high chance the female suicide bomber detained in Jordan has been swapped for him, or for his release, rather. We will have the latest as the story develops in our later newscast. Moving on to other stories. World leaders gathered with survivors of the Auschwitz camp in Poland as Tuesday marked the 70 years since its liberation. There were memorials held closer to their homes, but hundreds of survivors traveled all the way to the infamous concentration campsite itself, where they had spent their childhood to mourn, remember, and remind the world of the atrocities committed by Nazi soldiers in the past. Our Kim Yeon-bin takes us there.
Nazi Germany's largest and most notorious concentration camp, Auschwitz, was where some 1.1 million people, mostly Jews, were killed between 1940 and 1945. Over 300 aging survivors and a host of world leaders visited Auschwitz on Tuesday to reflect upon the slaughter that took place there. Over 70 years have passed, but the last survivor said the world should never forget the horrors that took place in Auschwitz and the Nazis' other death camps.
Some of the people still saying that it never happened. I'm here to tell the world it happened, and the world have to learn from it and to live in peace.
The elderly, women, and young children were killed in gas chambers and were burnt into ashes in incinerators, proof of the Nazis' atrocities.
They were killing people like nothing. It didn't mean anything. The smell was so bad here from burning people.
The event could mark one of the last major anniversaries attended by a large showing of survivors, given that the youngest are now in their 70s. Kim Yeon-bin, InterKorean News.
Korea's central bank is keeping a close eye on global oil prices given the growing uncertainties. During a meeting with economic experts on Wednesday, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Joo-yeol said the Korean economy could easily be affected by crude oil prices. Therefore, he said the bank is devising scenarios for both cases if prices fall further or rebound. The governor also said they're looking into just how long the low price trend will continue, saying that the bank had expected oil prices to rebound in the second half of the year when it released its new growth outlook earlier this month. South Korea ranked in the top 30 countries in terms of economic freedom. The list drawn up by the U.S.-based Heritage Foundation gives South Korea a score of 71.5, which is 0.3 points higher than last year. South Korea also jumped 2 ranks from 31st to 29th this year. The country scored relatively high in terms of giving local companies and its finance sector freedom to do business. But it did score poorly in terms of giving freedom to laborers and public transparency. Hong Kong topped the list, followed closely by Singapore. North Korea, on the other hand, was rock bottom. With more and more children knowing how to use computers nowadays, the Korean government is feeling the need to teach grade school kids the basics of computer software programming. The plan sounds ambitious, but is the right framework in place? Our Shin Se-min explains.
Developing your own computer software would be a daunting task for the uninitiated, but it's a key skill to know in this increasing technological age. Kids in Korean schools are learning the basics of software design using this program called Scratch.
I used to think designing and developing software was difficult, but I realized that it can be quite easy using programs such as this.
By matching up some programming codes and hooking up the light sensors to the system, children can even create their own computer game.
Learning the concept of software allows them to understand the computer games they play. I also see them introducing software programs to their younger brothers and sisters. It's a great way of learning and owning the skills they've acquired.
Software education is being rolled out across more schools in Korea. The Science Ministry is aiming to up the number of elementary and middle schools teaching software from 72 to more than 230 this year. The ministry also plans to hold more than 10 creative software camps in 2015.
Teaching software development is a great way of stimulating young minds and getting them interested in programming.
The ideas are grand, but putting them into practice could prove trickier. Many schools in Korea still lack enough computer labs, PCs, and teachers sufficiently trained in programming. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The new iPhone seemed a little bit too Galaxy to some, and they were concerned, but it looks like they made the right choice in Apple. Apple's fiscal first quarter results are in, and the numbers show that the company did even better than what investors were expecting from them. It sold 74.5 million iPhones in the holiday quarter, thanks to its two new models with bigger screens. Our Kim Jong-un has more.
Apple saw its revenue and profit soar during the holiday quarter thanks to record sales of its plus-size iPhones. Apple sold 74.5 million iPhones during its first fiscal quarter of 2015 that ended December 27, 2014. Sales during the period drove the company's total revenue to $74.6 billion, up 30% from a year earlier. The company's net profit went up to its highest level of $18 billion, reporting earnings of $3.06 a share. Released in September of last year, the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus models are the biggest iPhones yet, equipped with a 4.7-inch and 5.5-inch screen. That compares to the 4-inch screen on its previous iPhone 5 models. The jump in quarterly sales was also helped by sales of the iPhone in China. Market tracker Canalys says Apple dominated the Chinese smartphone market during the October to December period last year. Apple recorded sales of around $16 billion in mainland China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong during its fiscal 2015 first quarter. Apple is predicting its second quarter will be just as amazing as its first, with revenue of between $52 to $55 billion. This while other U.S. companies such as Microsoft have lowered their forecast due to the strength of the dollar. The U.S. smartphone maker adds that it's releasing its next product, the Apple Watch, in April. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Staying in the tech realm, the world's second largest chip maker SK Hynix posted a record high profit in sales for a second straight year in 2014. SK Hynix said Wednesday that its sales came to over 17 trillion won, or roughly $15.5 billion last year. That's up more than 20% from a year earlier. Operating profit grew over 50% to $4.7 billion. Net income was up 46% to $3.7 billion, also an all-time high. The Korean chipmaker attributes the rise to its efforts to reduce costs amid a stable business environment, with Samsung Electronics and Micron Technology remaining as its only rivals.
And marking the monthly Culture Day, President Park Geunhye watched the latest Korean blockbuster, Ode to My Father, or 국제시장 in Korean. Beforehand, she met with the director, actors, and culture officials to highlight how quality content such as this movie has brought different generations together and strengthened national pride. President Park then said the film and television industries are a major part of our creative economy drive of merging different sectors to spur growth. Ode to My Father is a story about a Korean man who lives through major events in modern Korean history, including the Korean War in the 1950s and the government dispatching nurses and miners to Germany in the 1960s.
Well, moderation doesn't seem to be Mother Nature's forte. We haven't seen much snow lately here in Seoul with warmer than expected temperatures. It's a different story over in Gangwon-do province where it's blanketed in snow. That's a good thing because it's the site of the Taebaeksan Mountain Snow Festival, the festival that only comes around during this time of the year. Our Im Yoon-hee takes us there.
Crystal clear skies and a winter wonderland. Every year, the Gangwon-do region gets blanketed in fluffy snow, creating a magical place that seems miles away from reality. Nestled within the area is the Taebaeksan Mountain, a mountain that soars 1,576 meters into the blue skies, a mountain known for its famous azalea plants and ancient yew trees. But for now, everything is quiet underneath the winter snow. And to celebrate, a festival is held on the Taebaeksan Mountain. People gather from all over the peninsula to trek the snowy paths and see the many beautiful sights of the mountain and the festival. including the massive ice sculptures that decorate these hills.
We don't see much snow in Suncheon, where we're from. Here, there are huge ice sculptures and beautiful green lights to see.
Away from the hustle and bustle of the city, this year's Taebaeksan Mountain Snow Festival offers the entire family a whirlwind of an experience. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
Well, most people around the world remember a very successful noise-producing performance called Stomp. From outside of Korea. And Korea actually upped it a little bit more from there.
Yes.
They came up with this show called Cooking when it first opened. Nanta is the Korean title, and it's featuring drum beats and kitchen utensils.
Yes, and it actually recently made history for being the most watched Korean production of all time. Our Connie Lee tells us what this means for Korea's performing arts arena.
There's a lot of drumming, beating, knife-wielding, and acting. This is just a brief behind-the-scenes look at Korea's very own production of Nanta. The rhythmic show just made history, hitting the 10 million viewer mark at home and abroad at the end of last year. That makes this not only the longest-running show in Korea, now in its 18th year, but also the most-watched Korean production of all time.
For a local theatrical production to hit 10 million viewers, it's unheard of, but Nanta did it. This gives hope to other locally made productions that they too could succeed.
To mark this milestone, PMC Production, the firm behind the show, celebrated this week and honored the original cast members, pictured on the trademark Nanta poster. You might recognize some of them, like actor Lee Seung-ryong, who's had a recent string of hit movies. The nonverbal show about a group of chefs cooking for a wedding banquet came to life in 1997 by longtime actor turned producer and director Song Seung-hwan.
I was inspired by childhood memories of hearing my mother cook in the kitchen. I wanted to create a show that incorporated the traditional Korean rhythms of samulnori and thought the kitchen had a number of items that could create those beats.
After 2 years, the show, also known as Cookin' in the West, hit the global stage, becoming the first Korean production to enter the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 1999, and then in 2003, becoming Korea's debut on Broadway. Since then, Nanta has toured the globe and has been shown more than 31,000 times in 289 cities and 51 different countries. Critics rave about the show's comedic features, its family-friendly nature, and the fun Korean beats that can get any crowd going.
When I first created the show, I didn't think it would last this long. Today, I see even greater opportunities for Korean-made productions to succeed even more abroad.
Officials now have their eyes set squarely on China, as a Nanta theater is set to be built in Guangzhou by this June. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Well, I learned something new through our weathercaster today. Did you know that catching a cold and a flu is entirely different?
No, I did not know that. Again, I thought the flu was when a cold got worse.
I thought there were gradual progressions, but probably that's what most people think. But to hear more about how they are exactly different, let's turn to our professional in terms of this field, our Michelle Park at the Weather Center for weather and more. Michelle?
Good evening, guys. Most people think that catching a cold is the same thing as coming down with the flu because they have symptoms in common. Now, they are both respiratory illnesses, but they are caused by different viruses. And it's true that colds are usually milder than the flu, and they don't usually result in serious health problems such as pneumonia or bacterial infections. And here are some of the differences in symptoms so you know the differences between the two and can get the right treatments. Now, with that in mind, let's take a look at the weather conditions for tomorrow and the rest of the week. We can expect temperatures back up to the seasonal average, except on Saturday, where there will be a sudden drops in the morning. Meanwhile, the snow continues over on some places down south, as well as in Gangwon-do province. Now to our readings for tomorrow. Seoul will start off the Thursday morning at -4 and gets up to 4 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will top higher at 6 and 7 degrees. And to other regions such as Jeju Island gets up higher at 8, Dokdo hits down to 3, while Gunmen dips low to -6 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thanks for that, Michelle. Well, that's a wrap for us. Thank you for watching. If you're tuned in from Korea, have a great rest of the evening. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Lee Ji-yoon, as always. Thank you for watching. Here's wishing our viewers in different time zones a great start to your day. We'll see you again right here tomorrow.